Okay, so let's try and do one example, okay, for you to make use of this formula. Okay, so let's say I give you one product, which is t-shirt, for example. Okay, so let's say the price of t-shirt, okay, initially is RM 10 ringgit. Okay, so when the price is 10 ringgit, the total demand will be about 50 pieces of t-shirts. Okay, and now what happens is the price of t-shirt increase from RM 10 ringgit to RM 15 ringgit. Okay, so this one I put as QD0, the initial demand. So when the price increase from 10 ringgit to 15 ringgit, what happens is consumers will reduce their purchase. They will not purchase as much as before. So let's say the demand is reduced from 50 to 30 pieces. So instead of 50, now people only buy 30 pieces. So using this example, how can you tell whether the demand for t-shirt is elastic or inelastic? Okay, so what you can do here is you can do the calculation using the examples given, using the formula given in the slide. Okay, so the formula for price elasticity of demand is the change in quantity demanded divided with the change in the price. Okay, so you calculate the change in quantity demanded first, which is QD1. Okay, QD1 minus QD0 divide with QD0 50, and then you divide with the change in price, or you can multiply using the formula in the slide, but I will do divide. Okay, so divide with the change in price, which is 15 P1 minus P0 divide with P0. So this is the change in price, this is the change in this is the change in quantity demanded, and this is the change in price. So when you calculate, what you will get here is 30 minus 50 divide with 50, negative 0.4 divide with 15 minus 10 divide with 10. So you get 0.5 for the change in price, and then you divide 0.4 with 0.5, you get negative 0.8. Okay, so in the case of price elasticity of demand, you will always get negative for your answer. Why? Because the relationship between price and quantity demanded is negative. Because usually when price increase, quantity demanded will decrease. Okay, you look at the law of demand. Okay, when price increase, quantity demanded decrease. When price decrease, quantity demanded will increase. So this is a negative relationship. So that's why your answer will always be negative. Okay, so to determine whether your answer is showing elasticity or inelasticity, you have to put your answer as an absolute value. So you just eliminate the negative sign, you put it as 0.8. Okay, so your answer here is 0.8. So later on we will see whether 0.8 is considered as elastic or inelastic. So let's look at the next slide here. Okay, so these are the measure or the indicator, okay, of how we can tell whether the demand for the product is elastic, okay, inelastic, perfectly inelastic, perfectly elastic, or unitary elastic. So we have 5 situations here. Okay, so the first one is elastic demand. So let's say your answer is more than 1. Okay, so when your answer is more than 1, it shows that the demand is elastic, meaning consumers are very responsive towards the change in the price of that particular product. Okay, so let's say if the price of usually for elastic demand, okay, it is for products that are, examples are luxury products, okay, that people don't usually buy, okay, or expensive products. So when there is an increase in the price of, let's say for example, handphones or cars or computers and so on, usually the demand will be very elastic. People will be very responsive. Okay, people will immediately reduce their purchase of that particular product. Okay, and for inelastic demand, okay, your answer, when you calculate, your answer will be less than 1. So for example, in the calculation that we have made just now, okay, you get here 0.8. So that is considered as inelastic demand. Okay, why? Because your answer is lesser than 0.8. So inelastic here is considered as consumers are not too responsive towards the change in the price. So what we can say here is, when the price of the t-shirt increased from 10 ringgit to 15 ringgit, consumers will reduce their purchase from 50 to 30, but not too much. Okay, maybe you can get elastic demand as your answer when the change in the quantity demanded is from 50 to 10 pieces, or that kind of example. Okay, so from 50 to 30 pieces, that is considered as inelastic. So that's why you get 0.8 as your answer. Okay. Okay, so for perfectly inelastic, okay, perfectly inelastic meaning there will be no response at all in terms of the change in the demand when there is a change in the price of a certain product. So this kind of situation here, okay, you will get the elasticity as 0, meaning there will be no change in the price at all. Okay, there will be no change in the demand at all for that particular product. So this can be used to explain a situation in which there is a change in the price of medicine or drugs, or for example insulin, okay, for diabetic people. So this kind of product is considered as product that they have to take by hook or by crook, they need to consume. So even if there is a change in the price of that particular product, they still need to buy, and they will not change their purchase. Their purchase will still be the same. Okay, so that's why you have here a perfectly inelastic demand. There is no response at all in terms of the consumer's demand when there is a change in the price of that particular product. So demand will not change in this case. Okay, another case here is perfectly elastic demand. Okay, so perfectly elastic demand is a situation, it's a very rare situation. Okay, it is hard to explain in reality, okay, to explain this theory. But perfectly elastic is a situation in which, when even if the price does not change, the quantity demanded can vary, can be to an infinity amount. Okay, so even if the price is stick at, let's say for example, 5 ringgit, okay, the demand for that product can change from a very wide range of quantity. Okay, so to an infinity amount of demand. Alright, so very hard to explain perfectly elastic or to get examples of perfectly elastic demand in reality. Okay, unitary elastic is a situation in which the change in the percentage change in the price is the same with the percentage change in demand. For example, if the price increased by 5% or 10%, the quantity demanded will also change by 10%. Okay, so the change in the demand, the change in price is the same with the change in the demand. Alright, so you will get your answer as 1, okay, when you calculate the elasticity. Okay, now so let me illustrate the elasticity in terms of in the form of a graph, okay, or curves. Okay, so we have five types of elasticity just now. We have elastic demand, we have inelastic, perfectly inelastic, perfectly elastic, as well as unitary elastic. So we are going to illustrate all those 5 using a graph. Okay, so let's look at first untuk untuk elastic demand. Okay, for elastic demand, in which your answer will be more than 1. Okay, so when you calculate elasticity and your answer is more than 1, it means that you get elastic demand. So how do you show an elastic curve on a graph? Okay, so let's say you have here quantity demanded and price. Okay, we are looking at the relationship between quantity demanded and price. So an elastic demand usually will have a flatter curve. So curve dia a little bit lepe lah. Okay, in Malay we call it lepe, flat. Okay, so this is elastic demand curve. Okay, so why does elastic demand curve flat? Okay, why is it flat? For example, if let's say there is a change in the price. Okay, let's say the price here is I put as P0, and when the price is at P0, the quantity is at Q0. Okay, if there is a change in the price, a small change in price, for example from P0 to P1, here a very small change, maybe I can put it as about 2% of change. But what will happen to the change in quantity demanded? It will be a huge change. Okay, a huge change, for example about 7% change. So the change in quantity demanded is more than the change in the price. Okay, meaning a very small change in price can cause a huge reduction in the demand. Okay, harga naik sikit pun demand dah turun sangat banyak. Itu yang kita panggil sebagai elastic. Okay, so that's why you have a flatter curve here for elastic demand curve. Alright, and then now let's look at if the demand is inelastic. If the demand is inelastic, when you calculate, you will get your answer less than 1. So how do you show an elastic curve on a graph? So you draw the same graph, quantity demanded, and then you have price on the y-axis. So for inelastic curve, it will be a little bit steep as compared to elastic. Okay, kalau elastic tadi dia lepis sikit, inelastic ni dia curam sikit. Okay, so you do a steep demand curve. So this is considered as inelastic demand curve. This is actually a demand curve. I label it as D. This is D. This is just to show that the demand is elastic. This one is to show that the demand is inelastic. Okay, so why do you have a steep demand curve here? Is because when there is a small change in the price, let's say from P0, the quantity demanded is at QD0. So a small change in the price from P0 to P1 will cause a small change in the quantity demanded from QD0 to QD1. So small change, let's say the change in the price is 2%, and the change in the quantity demanded is also 2%. Sorry, maybe you can put it as 3%, for example. Should be different. Okay, so the change in the price, okay, will cause a small change in the quantity demanded. So you get here an elastic demand curve, which is a little bit steeper as compared to the elastic demand curve, which is flat. Okay, so in this graph, okay, the dark blue here is an elastic demand curve, which is flatter as compared to the other curve. Okay, and then you have an inelastic demand, the yellow one. Okay, so this yellow curve here shows an elastic demand curve, which is a little bit steeper as compared to the dark blue. Okay, now let's look at a unitary elastic demand curve. So how do you draw a unitary elastic demand curve? Unitary means your elasticity equals to 1, meaning the change in the quantity demanded is the same magnitude with the change in the price. Okay, so that can be shown by drawing this same graph. Okay, maybe you can try and draw on your own so you can get used with the graph sketching and so on. Okay, for this kind of example. Alright, so a unitary elastic demand curve will have a constant curve like this. So when you connect the two axes, you will have a perfect curve. Okay, a perfect curve, which means if there is a change in the price, okay, let's say when the price is at P0, the quantity demanded is at Q0, and when price increase from P0 to P1, let's say the price increased by 2%. So what will happen to the quantity demanded? The quantity demanded will reduce from Q0 to Q1, which is also by the same magnitude, which is 2%. So the change in price, 2%. The change in quantity demanded, the change in price, the change in quantity demanded is also 2%. Okay, so that's why you get a unitary elastic demand, which is 1. So the curve should be like this. Okay, alright, and then for perfectly elastic, a perfectly elastic demand, okay, perfectly elastic, okay, when you calculate, you will get an infinity answer. Okay, so how do you draw the curve for perfectly elastic? Okay, you will have sorry, it should be P. You will have a horizontal line. Okay, this is a perfectly elastic demand curve. Let's say when the price is at P0, the quantity demand can change from a wide range of amount. Okay, and then for perfectly inelastic, okay, for perfectly inelastic, inelastic demand, in which your answer will equal to 0. Okay, so how do we draw a perfectly inelastic demand curve? Is quantity demanded on the x-axis and price. You will have a vertical straight line. It should be straight. Oh my god. Let me try and do a straight line. Okay lah, I consider that as a straight line. Okay, so it should be a vertical demand curve. Okay, why? Because even if the price change, for example from P0, okay, your quantity demanded will be at QD0. Even if the price change from P0 to P1, the quantity demanded will still be the same, meaning consumers will not change their purchase. Okay, will not reduce or will not increase their purchase. They will purchase the same amount. It means that the demand is not responsive, or the consumers is not responsive from the change in the price of that product. Okay, so that's why you have a perfectly inelastic demand here, right? Okay, so what are examples of determinants or factors that can give impact on the elasticity or the responsiveness of consumers on their own purchase of a certain product? Okay, so for example, here we have the first one, existence of substitutes. Okay, substitutes mean replacement, okay, of a certain product. Okay, so if the product has a lot of substitutes, okay, or replacement, it means that consumers have a lot of options to buy. For example, if you want to buy shoes, let's say the first brand is Nike, and then you have another brand, Adidas, Reebok, Skechers, and so on. So if the price of Nike, for example, the price of Nike shoes increase, okay, so people will immediately change their consumption, change their purchase. Instead of purchasing Nike shoes, they have the option of purchasing shoes from Adidas or Reebok or Puma, and so on. So they have various options, okay, from the market. Okay, so usually for this kind of situation, the demand will be very elastic. Okay, people will be very responsive. Okay, so when there is substitute, demand will be very elastic. Okay, people will be, the consumers can be very responsive, okay, towards their change in the demand. Why? Because they have options. Okay, consumers have options ataupun alternatives to buy. Okay, so they will immediately reduce their purchase of Nike shoes, and they will change their purchase to the other brands of shoes. Okay, so for substitute, the demand will be very elastic. For products with higher substitute, the demand will be very elastic. Okay, the second determinants here is in terms of the proportion of the expenditure on a certain product. So here we are talking about whether the change in the price of that particular product is high or a small change. Okay, so I have already given an example like this before previously. If let's say you want to buy food, okay, so usually the price will increase by 1 ringgit or 2 ringgit, for example, or by 50 cent, and so on. So there is a small change in the price which will not give impact on the purchase of the by the consumers. Okay, so even if I want to buy food and the price of the food increased by 50 cent, that should be okay for me. So I will not reduce my purchase too much. Okay, so I will not be responsive towards a change in that kind of product because the price is increasing too small. Okay, but if there is a change in the price of the product that are expensive, okay, in nature, for example, like jewelries or handphones, for example. So if I want to buy handphones, usually the price of handphone, if the price of handphone increase, it will not increase by 50 cent or 1 ringgit and so on. It will increase by hundreds or thousands. So when there is an increase in the price by hundreds or thousands, okay, I will consider that as a huge increase. Okay, and that will consume a lot of my money. So what I will do is I will reconsider on whether to buy or not. So in that kind of situation, the reduction in the demand will be very huge. Okay, because it involves a huge amount of money, a huge increase in the price. Okay, so bila harga naik terlalu tinggi, terlalu banyak, kesan dia lebih besar kepada kita punya pendapatan. The impact is high on our income. We have to spend more of our income on purchasing that particular product. So our demand or our purchase will reduce by a huge amount. Okay, so demand will reduce by a huge amount. So for products, for the price of products that increase, for a certain products in which the price increase in a small amount, the elasticity, the demand will be inelastic. But for the products in which the price increase in a huge amount, the demand will be elastic. Okay, so that kind of situation. Okay, for nature of goods, okay, nature of goods, we are talking about whether the good is a basic necessity goods, or is it a luxury good or inferior goods, and so on. Okay, for basic necessity goods, okay, example, the closer example is food. Okay, that is basic necessity. So for that kind of product, okay, I put here basic necessity. Okay, like food, usually the demand will be inelastic. By hook or by crook, people will still need to buy food to consume every day. Okay, so people will not be too responsive towards the change in the price of that kind of product. But if we are talking about luxury goods, like cars or jewelries, okay, the demand for this kind of product will be elastic. Okay, because why? It is not basic necessities, and if there is a change in the price, the change in the price will be very huge. So people will reduce their purchase for this kind of product. People will be very responsive if there is a change in the price of this kind of product. Okay, income level. Okay, so of course for income level, if you earn a higher level of income, if the consumers have higher level of income, they tend to purchase more. Okay, so even if the price of that product increase, okay, they will not feel, okay, the change in the price, and that will not give impact on their demand. So usually when income is indicated by Y. So if income increase, usually demand, or if income level is high, usually demand will be inelastic. Okay, usually rich people will not feel much of the change in the price level. That is the logic lah. But if people is in a lower income level, okay, meaning they have lower income, whenever they want to purchase a certain product, the price will give impact on their purchase. So demand will be very elastic. Selalu orang yang susah ni dia akan rasa lah. Kalau harga naik tu akan terasa. Okay, itu maksud dia elastic demand. Okay, they will be very responsive. Dia akan, kalau harga naik, dia akan cepat-cepat kurangkan pembelian dia. Okay, because that will consume a lot of their income. Alright. And then for time dimension, okay, time dimension here, let's say in the case of short term period and long term period. Okay, so if the change in the price is in short term, meaning very immediate, okay, usually they have no time to change their purchase. So demand will be a bit inelastic. Okay, meaning they have no time to reduce their purchase. Contoh, in the case of the earlier period of COVID-19 during March, okay, the price of mask increased drastically. The price of hand sanitizer increased drastically. So in that particular period of time, people have no choice but to buy, even though the price has increased. Okay, but the longer the period of this pandemic, okay, has go through, so people have longer time to decide, okay, whether to buy from this seller or to buy from other sellers. Okay, so in the long term, if the price increase in the long term, demand will be more elastic. Usually consumers will have a lot of other options. They will do a lot of research on where they can buy mask or hand sanitizer at a cheaper price. Okay, so they can change their demand drastically. Okay, so in the long term, demand will be elastic. Okay, so for habits, okay, this factor here explains about a situation in which consumers are having bad consumption of bad products like cigarettes or alcohol and so on. So consumers, these kind of consumers, okay, even though there is a change in the price of cigarettes, for example, okay, in theory and in reality, their consumption will not change as much. Okay, they still need to buy cigarettes. Okay, and they still think that this kind of consumption is important to them. So even if the price increase, they still will buy the product. So the change in the price in for this kind of products will not give too much impact on the purchase of the consumers. Okay, so usually for this consumption, the demand will be inelastic. Okay, so smokers, okay, will not be too responsive towards the change in the price of cigarette. They will still buy the cigarette even though the price increase. Okay, next is for complementary goods. Okay, complementary goods, if you still remember, are the goods that usually come together. Okay, you need for example, you need product A in order for you to use product B. Okay, so the easy example that I can use now here is let's say ink and printer. In order for you to operate your printer or to use your printer, you need to have ink, which are usually sold separately. So even if the price of ink increase, okay, the demand for ink will not change as much, because if you need to use your printer, you still need to buy the ink. Okay, so even if the price of ink becomes more expensive, you still need to buy. So for this kind of product, okay, complementary products, demand will be inelastic. Okay, demand for complementary products will be inelastic. Alright. Okay, for frequently purchased product. Okay, frequently purchased product. Okay, if we compare products that are rarely purchased and frequently purchased. Okay, products that are frequently purchased, for example, food or normal goods like t-shirt or shoes or any other types of products that you can buy daily. Okay, so usually for this kind of products that are frequently purchased, the demand will be inelastic. Okay, because you will buy this product daily. Okay, so you like it or not, you still need to buy. But for rarely purchased product, this is actually close to nature of goods here. Okay, you can use the same explanation for nature of goods. Okay, for rarely purchased products like cars, jewelries, expensive products, okay, usually the demand will be very elastic. Okay, you can change your demand drastically when there is an increase in the price of this kind of products, because it is considered as products that are not too important, that you don't buy daily. Alright. Okay, so previously we have looked at the different types of elasticity, okay, or responsiveness of consumers towards the change in the price. Okay, now we want to look at what is the impact of the different types of elasticity on the revenue that can be obtained by the producers. So let's say you put yourself as a producer in this situation and you want to sell a certain product. So will elasticity give impact on your revenue if you change the price of your product? Okay, contoh awak nak naikkan harga barang awak, so mesti awak terfikir-fikir sama ada consumer akan beli ataupun tidak. Okay, consumer akan kurangkan pembelian ataupun tak bila awak naikkan harga. Itu contoh dia. So let's say in the case of elastic demand, okay, first you need to know how to calculate total revenue. Okay, total revenue is actually what you get when you sell your products. Okay, so basically your sales lah. Alright, so to calculate total revenue, okay, the formula is the price of your product, okay, which is in RM, you multiply with how many you manage to sell. Okay, quantity purchased by the consumer. So this is in units. Okay, so how much you sell, you multiply with the price of each unit of the product, so you get your sales here or your total revenue. Okay, so you want to see whether elasticity will give impact on your revenue. Will your revenue increase or will your revenue reduce if you increase the price of your product? So let's look at the first situation. If let's say your product, okay, the demand for your product is elastic, meaning if you change the price, people or consumers will be very responsive. Okay, so in this kind of situation, okay, let's say you have here, okay, quantity demanded and price. Okay, so you can also refer to your slide here. Okay, so for elastic demand curve, if you still remember, I have illustrated before. Elastic demand curve is a bit flat. Okay, flat curve. So you draw a flat demand curve. Okay, so if there is a change in the price, let's say price initially was at 20 ringgit. So when the price is 20 ringgit, people will buy 10 units of your product. And now you can find the total revenue by multiplying 20 with 10. So the total revenue when the price is at RM20 is 20 times 10. So your total revenue is RM200. So that is when you sell your product at 20 ringgit. But at one point you decide to increase the price of your product to 30 ringgit. So what will happen? Consumers will reduce their purchase at a high amount from 10 to 5 ringgit. So now your revenue will be different because you multiply 30 price with the quantity 5 ringgit. So when the price is at RM30, the revenue is 30 multiply with 5. So what you get here is RM150. So you notice here that your revenue has reduced from RM20 to RM150. So your revenue is reduced by 50 ringgit. So in this kind of situation, what you should decide is you should not increase the price of your product, because when you increase the price of your product from 20 ringgit to 30 ringgit, you notice that your revenue will reduce by 50 ringgit. So you rugi lah. So as a producer, your decision here is you should not increase the price because the demand of your product is elastic. Okay, maybe people have other option. Maybe you are selling products in which your product has a lot of substitute. So instead of buying from you, consumers can shift their purchase to another brands. Maybe you sell cakes, so consumers have a lot of option. So if you sell your cakes from 20 ringgit, you increase the price to 30 ringgit, consumers will run to the other seller. They will buy from other sellers because they have options. So that is example of elastic demand. Okay, and then if your demand is inelastic, okay, what will happen to your revenue? Okay, so again, to calculate revenue is price times quantity. Okay, and if your demand is inelastic, meaning consumers are not responsive towards the change in the price of your product. So for inelastic demand curve, okay, so you have here quantity demanded, and then you have here price. So inelastic demand curve will be a little bit steeper. Okay, so this is your demand curve. Okay, so for this kind of situation, let's say the initial price is at RM1 ringgit, like the example you have in the slide. So when the price is at 1 ringgit, consumers will buy 15 units of your product. So the revenue here is price times quantity. So the total revenue when you sell your product at 15 ringgit is 15 times 1. So you get RM 15. Okay, but if you decide to increase the price of your product from 1 ringgit to 2 ringgit, the demand will reduce from 15 to 10. Just a small amount of reduction. So what is your revenue here? 2 times 10. So your total revenue when the price is at 2 ringgit, sorry, this one should be 1 ringgit. My bad here. Okay, so when the price is at 2 ringgit, the total revenue is 10 units times 2 ringgit. So you get RM 20. So what you can see here is your revenue is increasing from 15 ringgit to 20 ringgit. So as a producer, will you increase the price from 1 ringgit to 2 ringgit? Okay, the price of your product from 1 ringgit to 2 ringgit? Yes, you can do so. Because why? Your revenue will increase from 15 to 20 ringgit. So your revenue will increase by 5 ringgit. So you make extra sales of 5 ringgit when you increase the price of your product. Okay, so that is the kind of decision that you can make as a producer. So it is important for a producer to know the nature of your product. Okay, and what will happen to the demand of your product if you change the price. Okay, and another situation is for unitary elastic. Okay, for unitary elastic, what you can see here, okay, in the graph, the initial price is at 1 ringgit and the quantity demanded is 20. So when you sell your price at 1 ringgit, the demand will be 20. People will buy 20 of your product. So the revenue should be 20 times 1. So you get 20 ringgit. But when you increase the price of your product from 1 ringgit to 2 ringgit, the quantity demanded will be 10. So when you multiply 2 with 10, you still get total revenue of 20. So the revenue is the same. There is no change in the total revenue. So it is safe to say here that you can actually increase your price, but it will not give impact on your total revenue. That is for unitary elastic demand. Okay.